Along this King Kong franchise journey, we have taken trips to visit Kong in the 1930s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, and then came back strong in the early 2000s and the late 2010s and even the 2020s with the Monsterverse. And all in all, we've done 10 films on the King Kong franchise, and here we are, one episode left for Chris and I here on Chills and Thrills podcast to do our King Kong franchise ranking.
There's just one chance. If you can scream, but your throat's paralyzed, try to scream, man. Cry. Perhaps if you didn't see it, you could scream. Throw your arms across your eyes and scream, man. Scream for your life.
Let them fight.
You're a wizard, Harry.
You're gonna need a bigger boat. I'll be back.
Death has come to your little town, Jim.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Chills and Thrills. Connor here with you along with Chris to finish up the King Kong franchise, our last episode here today. We are going to do our rankings of the 10 live action King Kong films. There are 13 King Kong films, but we are not going to include the 3 animated films. I did try to sneak one in here, which was The Mighty Kong. It was released in like the late 90s, one of the ones I watched as a kid, like a real little guy, like 5-6 years old. But we're just going to stick to the live action ones. But before that, I wanted to dive in and kind of give Chris some an idea of how our first year on the podcast went with like our top 10 episodes and kind of some of the different countries where we were listened to. It kind of surprised me, so I'll give you some of that.
All right, sounds good.
So I'll hit you with some of the countries that listened to us first. So we were listened to in 17 countries total.
Okay.
Including some of the more popular ones were like the United States, were like 84% of our listeners, of course.
Of course, yeah.
The United Kingdom, we had about 6% of our listeners from.
Oh, there we go. Go Brits. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Costa Rica had just under 4%.
Okay.
Mexico with 2%. So, I mean,
All
those
right.
four, and then there's a couple that were under 1% of our listeners, like Germany, Canada, Ireland,
Oh, wow.
Italy. We even, with our
Canada,
big...
wow. Canada needs to pull up more of their fair share. Canada, come on, what you doing?
Yeah, they're right next to us. Come on.
Yeah, get it figured out.
This is a cool one, I thought. We had some listeners from Japan, so I'm wondering if they were into our Godzilla episodes.
Very nice. That's very fun. And, you know, that's an honor. You know, they're listening to a bunch of Yanks talk about Godzilla. A bunch of oh gosh, what do they call? Gaijin is what they call Americans in Japan or foreigners in Japan.
I have heard you say that before, and I had no idea what it was until you explained it to me.
I only learned it because of Tokyo Drift.
So those are some of the countries and places that listened to us last year.
Well, I'll say this: if Canada doesn't up their numbers, they're about to become State 51. Okay.
For our, we also had some 78% of our listeners were male, 21% female, and then 1% were not specified.
Oh, okay, whatever. Not specified. Sorry.
I had to throw it in there for them.
Yeah, sorry, that's not a choice anymore.
The basis of our age for listeners, 45% of our listeners were anywhere from 28 to 34, and then 40% of our listeners were 35 to 44. So those were our two big numbers.
Alrighty, so we're polling well with the older demos. All right, we gotta get out to
Absolutely.
the youths. We gotta get the children on board.
Well, I know my nieces listen every now and again, so they're helping out.
Nice,
They're anywhere they're between like the 8 and 13-year-old age.
nice. Okay, that works. That works.
So do you want to, I don't know, see if I can give you like three guesses to guess any of our episodes that are in our top 10 besides the one that I gave away?
Okay. Oh, geez. All right. Yeah. And I've not done any of the. I used to religiously click into the channel and see which ones were getting good views, but I never committed any of the memory, and I haven't done that in months. I haven't like done any like view tracking or anything like that. So three guesses for in our top 10 videos. Is that it? I'm just in the wild. I'm not given like multiple choices or anything.
Nope, give me three that you think are on here.
Okay. All right. Oh, geez. All right. Is destroy all monsters in there?
It is not.
Okay. Is King Kong versus Godzilla in there?
It is. I will not tell you what spot yet, but that is in our top
Okay.
10.
All right. So that's two choices. And then hmm. Hmm.
It's tough.
I don't know. I feel like the vintage ones, the classics that have been up longer would have the better bet. Is the original Godzilla in there?
Yes, it is. That is in
Okay.
there. And clearly that's our longest running episode that's been out for just over a year, so it has an
Mhm.
advantage.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that was my three guesses, I suppose.
Yep. I'll go ahead and I'll give you our top 10. So in the number
Yeah.
10 spot,
Give me 10 up. Give me 10 up. Yeah.
I'll give you number 10 is Godzilla vs. Gigan.
Okay, nice. All right. Hey, that's a dark horse favorite.
It is. That one surprised me. Coming in above it at number 9 is Godzilla vs. Biollante.
Ooh, nice. Shout out to Biolante. I love that.
Jaws 2 is in our number 8 spot.
Really?
Yes.
Wow. Huh.
And that was just
Must have
released here in December or last December.
Yeah, that must have just been right place, right time. Okay. Yeah, shout out Jaws too. Okay.
Mothra vs. Godzilla from 1964 is our number 7 spot.
Wow. All right. All right. Yeah, I'm bad. I guessed all Godzilla movies. I wasn't even thinking about like all of the Friday the 13th and the Jaws and stuff that we've done. Really bad showing for me as far as the guesses go.
Well, it helped that Godzilla was what 37 of our weeks last
Yeah.
year out of
Yeah,
52.
it's kind of packed there, the odds are in its favor to make it to the top 10.
Yeah, when we do this same thing next year, it'll be a little different.
Before we move on, can I ask are any of the remaining a Friday the 13th movie?
We do not have any Friday the 13th
Oh,
on here.
okay. All right, fair enough.
Number 6 is one of your favorites, and Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster.
That's right. Superior to Invasion of Astro Monster in every way.
I'll kindly disagree. Number 5 is one of my favorites, the original Jaws.
Oh, nice. Okay, that tracks. It'd be shocking if Jaws 2 was up there higher than Jaws.
Yeah, well, these top 4 you will have no complaints about, I guarantee it.
Okay, all right, let's go then.
So in our number 4 spot is King Kong versus Godzilla.
Nice. Didn't I guess that one?
You did.
Oh yeah, nice. I said it was right. Okay, that's right. All right, sorry. Blanking.
Number
Nice.
3 spot, we have Godzilla -1.
Oh hell yeah, that's right. I don't know why I didn't guess that one. Golly, I'm all over the place here.
And then number 2, Godzilla Raids Again.
Really?
Our second longest running episode.
Wow.
So
That's
I'm guessing you
interesting.
can guess our number 1 because I
Is it
told
the
you it was
original?
on the list.
Is it the original Godzilla then?
It is the original 54
Well,
Godzilla.
I'm proud of that. That's cool. That's great. That was a good discussion. I think Godzilla Raids Again. I always have this weird theory about it that I throw out there is that for so long it was just an out of print VHS in North America, and even that the US version of the movie that was available, it had the Godzilla Raids Again title card, but they call it Gigantus throughout the whole movie, and it's weird, and they swap Godzilla and Anguirus' roars and whatnot. So I think for a big generation of people, like sure, in the mid 2000s it was released on DVD properly, and now it's on Blu-ray properly. But like I think there was probably like a 20 to 30 year range there where it was an out of print VHS, and basically in America, it was like this very hard thing to find. And when you found it, it was this oddball hodgepodge thing where the only thing about Godzilla in the movie officially was the title. And so I just think it's so under noticed and underappreciated and underseen that I think that can cause people to be interested in it disproportionately on the internet. So they're interested in finding it, in hearing about it and looking it up. That's just my theory. I don't know.
Well, come next year, we will have to see if, what creeps into our top 10 list, because I might have to find a way to see what our top 10 has been through each year, because my stats
That would be
only give
interesting.
me like our current
Overall.
top 10 through all total listens.
Yeah. It would be really, man, hopefully when spooky season rolls back around again, people will find and discover more of the I really thought the Friday the 13th would have, I feel like they have longevity maybe, but maybe when spooky season rolls back around again, they'll find some more footing.
They are slowly creeping up there. So
Mm-hmm.
why don't we get to what we came here for? I'll save you for last, Chris. I'll go first, and
Okay.
I might this might be controversial already, and I
Okay.
went back and forth between my number 9 and my number 10 spot, and I
Okay.
think because how many times I watched the other film when I was younger and nostalgia, that in the number 10 spot I have the 1933 Son of Kong.
Mm. Mm.
And
Okay.
it's not because I like all these films, don't get me wrong, but I like Robert Armstrong's portrayal in this as Carl Denham, and I like that we get Kiko, or the Son of Kong. I like that it's a short, quick to the it's a quick pace film, and I there's not anything really bad I can say about it. It's such an old film. The special effects don't really hold up, even though they're great for the time. But I think the film above it, I watched more as a kid, so I have nostalgia. So this one ends up getting the 10th place spot by default.
Fair enough. My number 10 spot goes to King Kong Lives. Linda Hamilton can't save this movie from being the worst of the King Kong movies, in my opinion. Uh, it's just such a when you get those sequels that are made, sort of, they feel. I'm not saying that was the intention here, but they feel like the cheap sequel made many years removed with no real carryover from the previous entry. It just feels like that's sort of like, oh, let's dig that up, let's throw something out there, and let's try to make a quick buck without really putting that much into it. Like, yeah, the director returns, but I think the 10 years later that it was a little bit of a different atmosphere around that director helming this movie. And so King Kong Lives, Lady Kong is kind of frustrating to deal with, and the whole thing's like just got this inherently kind of, there's ways to film people in suits that make them feel not like people in suits, and it feels like this movie doesn't try that hard, or at least doesn't pull it off that well. And so King Kong Lives overall, and it's just kind of a slog to get through. So I mean, it has its moments, it has its cool concepts and things like that, but yeah, King Kong Lives is the worst for me.
And I can respect that, because we definitely had a long chat about that during the episode of how like Lady Kong is just blah in the film, and that's my number 9 film on this ranking is King Kong Lives. Like you said, I've always liked Linda Hamilton. Brian Kerwin as Hank in this film. I like him as one of our protagonists in the film. But it always was Lady Kong that bugs me. We get Colonel Nevitt, who's a great character to hate in the film,
Yeah,
And
he's kind of cool in that military villain kind of way where it's like he's not the good guy, but you can kind of dig him, you know?
yeah, he's easily he's easy to root for to be somebody who ends up getting killed by Kong or has like
Yes.
a terrible demise in the film.
Hmm.
So this, I've always liked Kong, and I liked the '76 Kong so much when I was younger, and him dying at the end. Of course, I knew that he died at the end of that, and to see like a sequel come up to where he doesn't die when he falls off the trade center. He goes into a coma, and as a kid, I loved that. I was like, oh, he didn't die, and then he ends up dying at the end
Die.
of this film anyway. So it's like, damn.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I think it's because of how much I liked this film when I was just a real little guy that this goes above Son of Kong in the 9 spot.
Alrighty then. For me, in my ninth spot, I have Son of Kong. I think comparing it to King Kong Lives, I would say that this one feels, even though it's not very good, it feels like a more organic sequel concept. You know, the idea of Kong was shot up and fell off the building and put into a coma so that we can have him alive in the next one feels a little more hokey than, hey, Kong had an offspring on the island. And it's at least retaining one major character, and then if you count Captain Inglehorn, a supporting character from the original movie, kind of carrying over Carl Denham's story kind of organically into this one to have a reason of why he would want to go back to the island. And it conceptually it works that Kong had a son on the island, and it takes a long bit to get going, but ultimately it's only a 69-minute movie or 69 minutes of your time wasted if you want to look at it negatively, but it's still got a lot of that. It's we don't get a lot of we didn't get a string of black and white King Kong movies. We have two of them, so it's kind of this rare extra dose of the classic sort of stop motion animation, black and white filmmaking of this 30s King Kong that you have the original movie, but this gives you a little bit more of that. Gives you a little bit more of that without being that movie. So it's kind of valuable in that sense. So I mean, I just think that generally, even though neither of them are great sequels, neither of them are even particularly good sequels, but I think this one's a little bit of a better sequel than King Kong Lives.
It's about 30 minutes longer, and it does not have Lady Kong.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. 30 minutes shorter. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I meant to say.
No, it's okay. I forgive you.
Okay, appreciate it. In my number 8 spot, I have King Kong Escapes, which I thought on my rewatches this might be a little higher because I hated this film when I was a kid. I did not like the look of King Kong in it and Mechanic Kong, but I grew to like this, and it's always nice to see Akira Takarada and then Madame Pirano and Doctor Who were good at like antagonists to root against, and Rhodes Reason like was in it, and I just thought they had a good little character, like a good little trio. I got over the the lazy like generic look of the King Kong suit, and you mentioned that like Gorosaurus is like in this film and he doesn't get a lot of love and he has a fight with Kong, so that made me put it a little higher right there just because of words that you've spoken. So I had fun with this one on my rewatches with it, cuz this easily, if you'd asked me a year ago, would have been number 10. And I mean, it didn't go up very high, but it went up 2 spots in my number 8 spot.
Yeah, we're in agreement here. I also have King Kong Escapes as my number 8 spot, and I echo all the things you said. And yeah, it's kind of it gets to be, it's the only sort of Toho Kong movie where it was just a King Kong movie, and not shared with Godzilla. So it's unique for that. It's the lesser of the Toho King Kong movies, but it's still pretty fun in its own way, and it introduced a character like Gorosaurus, which became kind of a minor recurring monster, but a unique monster of its own, basically a giant T Rex. But I mean, or a giant vintage looking T Rex where they stood upright, and it gives Kong another battle with him, and it doesn't have Manda, but it has a monster that might as well be Manda with the serpent, and so and Mechanic Kong is a precursor to Mecha Godzilla for better or worse, and so it did a lot of interesting things, and twisting the iconography. The '76 movie was cool because Kong went up the World Trade Center instead of the Empire State Building, and in this one they climbed the what is it? Is that the Tokyo Tower or whatever they call it? I'm not sure, but they climb a piece of tall iconography in Japan, and so it's always cool to see riffs on the classic imagery, and so again these three are sort of my definitive like bottom three, bottom third of the series. These are the three that I would say that unless you're a really dedicated fan, I would rate them as pretty much overall bad, but probably still worth watching for to complete your kind of marathon here, but not great, not any I would sort of blindly recommend on their own, but they're nice little supplemental movies to the main movies that they follow up that are superior. But this rounds out the bottom three for me, but it's still pretty. We're getting better here.
Yeah, we're not matching up too bad on these 10. It's a lot different than doing 38 films. So
Yeah, yeah.
this one might be controversial. I don't know if you're gonna hound me or if I'm gonna get death threats or But in my number 7 spot, I have the '62 King Kong versus Godzilla.
Hmm. I'm not gonna throw death threats at you, but I'm interested in
I
hearing what you
I
have to say.
I loved it as a kid. I love the
Uh-huh.
characters like Mr. Taco and Kinzabaru and man, like Dr. Shigezawa played by Akihito Harada, and like there's a lot of good characters in this. There's a lot of like funny like joke lines or like jump cuts where they like meant certain scenes as a joke and it jumps to another scene. Like have you mentioned like don't go to Hokkaido and then they jump like where are you going? And it that just gives me a laugh every time. Like Kong doesn't look the greatest in this, but I'm kind of basing these films off of how Kong is represented in the films. So
Hmm.
I guess that like this he shares it with Godzilla, and there's a lot about Godzilla in this film. And I think it's a well represented film for Kong. Again, I think it's a generic suit for Kong, but I have fun with it. I loved it as a kid. I was ecstatic when I found out we were getting like a remake or a rematch of these two titans. And I just ranking the films when I see like the Kong solo films, I think those do it more for me in the Kong franchise than some of these other ones like King Kong Escapes or King Kong Lives because he has Lady Kong or he has Mechanic Kong or he has Godzilla to battle. But I I like all these films, and King Kong versus Godzilla, the '62 version, just ended up in the 7 spot by default because I just think there's 6 better films that portray Kong better.
Fair enough. Um, I'll talk about that movie when I get to it. My number 7 spot is actually, and you're probably gonna. I'm into my sort of middle four here. I kind of have my bottom three, my top three, and my kind of middle four. And I'm sure you're gonna give me some static for this, but King Kong '76 is my number 7 spot. Um, it's not a in and of itself, it's a pretty good creature feature. Sort of, when we kind of recontextualize it as like this was sort of following in the footsteps of a movie like Jaws, making the creature feature sort of an A movie instead of a B movie type of thing. You can see where they were coming from with this, trying to sort of elevate King Kong and do King Kong as a kind of 1970s A-list big budget, A production, and it's a solid attempt. I just feel that the pieces don't come together in a way that is very satisfying. You know, Jessica Lange went on to have a lot of accolades and be a well accomplished actress, but this is not her. This is not her finest performance. Jeff Bridges is a little he's on, but he's a little off. The modernization of it works in some regards, but it doesn't work in other regards. I love the classical adventure feeling of like they're going to film a movie on an island, like that sort of more innocent vibe to it, as opposed to just like the greedy oil company. You know, so this one it just and they feels like this version of Island is just a bit more mundane and not as fantastical. So when you're thinking about like the iconography of King Kong, even climbing the Empire State Building, battling a T-Rex, all the different dinosaurs and creatures on the island, the kind of classical, you know, all of the pieces that you sort of assume, this is one that's kind of off brand from some of that in a lot of ways. And so this one kind of, it's not a bad movie, but it kind of gets my bottom middle here.
I'll accept it. I will accept it.
Oh,
It hurt.
you're gonna have some tougher pills to swallow before the end, believe me.
Oh man, it hurts me dearly, but I'll deal with it. So then I'll give you my number 6 spot. I have Godzilla Kong: The New Empire. And I I have fun with this. Like we've talked about it. This goes back to like the cheesy Showa era Godzilla. Like doesn't take itself as serious. Like it's one of those. I love the cast. I love Trapper and Dr. Eileen Andrews being back. Gia. Bernie Hayes is back. Like they bring a large amount of the characters back in this film, and I love that about it. I like Kong's portrayal, how he's more in Hollow Earth now and kind of getting his own like legit story where he finds more apes like himself, and he has to have like the war of the apes to like see like if he can be like a part of this like family and get rid of the Scar King, and he gets the beast glove in this. There's a lot to like about this for anything that has to deal with King Kong. Like this is another Godzilla and Kong movie to where Kong is more the center of attention than Godzilla is, and that's why it's a little higher up. Clearly, the CGI and special effects in this, Kong looks phenomenal. Again, like I said, the cast is great, but I have more fun with other films that take themselves a little bit more serious, and this one, even for having like recency bias, like to have watched this one, as many times as I have since it's came out, less than a year ago. I think that nostalgia has put some of these other films a little higher that I've watched 50 times in my life compared to the 4 or 5 times I've seen this one. Even though I still do have a blast with this, but it's stuck in my number 6 spot for the Kong franchise.
Fair enough. I might be breaking your heart here, but my number 6 is actually Peter Jackson's King Kong 2005. uh,
It's broken. I just died.
yeah, I know it stings, and this movie does, and I'm even a little shocked that it kind of only landed at number 6. This movie does a lot of things incredibly well. All the technical aspects, the production value, the special effects, the creature design, the design of the world. It's all extremely, extremely well done. And at its highs, it captures that adventure cinema feel sort of perfectly that you want to associate with King Kong. It's just that the again, it's sort of the parts are greater than the sum of the whole a little bit. This movie does not need to be 3 hours. Even some of the brilliant monster sequences that they cut from the movie for the extended edition could have been put in this movie, and it still shouldn't have been a 3 hour movie. The first hour is not really put together all that well and structured all that well. Like you're not making Titanic here. You're not making Gone with the Wind. You're making a King Kong movie. That matters. It's a good ensemble cast, but this isn't Lord of the Rings where you get to have 20 plus characters. Like it needed a little bit more focus. It needed some stuff folded in. Some of the casting feels kind of just as much brilliant as some of the other casting feels kind of odd. Like, is Jack Black a crazy good choice for Carl Denham, or is it a little too hard to buy him in when he's being serious, or does everything he says even when he's being serious feel like he's putting on this joke, and then the character comes across as kind of a douche the whole time? Is Adrian Brody, do you buy him as a screenwriter? Yes. Do you buy him as a sort of action romantic lead in a spectacle blockbuster like this? That's a bit harder of a thing to buy. uh it's just one of those things where it feels like there's a lot of just like it's split in some ways. For everything it kind of does amazingly and perfectly, it kind of has this other thing that goes with it where it's like, yeah, but it kind of misses the mark here, kind of overdoes it here, kind of undercooks it there. And so like I'm so torn, and the fact that it's nearly the middle of the pack here kind of says a lot, because it's sort of like 50% absolutely perfect, 50% kind of really not perfect. So that's why King Kong 05 gets my number 6 spot.
Well, man, you're making me question where I put it now, making some good points.
No, I mean, I'm just speaking my piece here.
Man, I gotta stop listening to you.
I make a compelling case, huh?
You make a compelling case. I'm gonna have to mute you when you talk. At least until we're done with our list, and then
Yeah.
I'll listen to it when we release it, so I don't
Yeah.
feel bad about where I put them.
This has been my TED Talk.
Man, that is a good argument. Oh, number five, halfway through the 10. And I have the 2021 Godzilla versus Kong.
Okay. Oh man. All right.
I know I am
Yeah,
controversial here.
I'll suck it up. I mean, yeah, we're gonna be seeping into the controversy in our top 5 here, but yeah.
I love everything about this film. I really do. I love that we get a rematch of like the two most famous like monsters or kaiju like ever known, and I love Kong's design in this. I love that he is so emotional and he has like the human character connection with Gia, and then with like Dr. Andrews, and he just everything about Kong in this is great, except it's not a solo Kong film. And again, when I look at these Godzilla versus Kong films or Godzilla and Kong films, when I come to these films, I want to see Godzilla. They make Kong the centerpiece, but I want to see Godzilla. So when I come to these,
Mm.
when it's so much Kong, I'm just like, all right, where's Godzilla? Need more Godzilla. So it kind of put like a little damper on my rating for the film. But everything about Kong in this film, I absolutely enjoy. Like I said, the look, the connections that he has with the human characters. I love that him and Godzilla get to throw down as a tag team towards the end. And I as much as I didn't like it at first, I do like that he gets the final blow on Mechagodzilla, but Godzilla is the one who kind of has to give the assist and power up his battle axe. But I have an absolute blast with this. It's just I grew up watching some other films, and I still like those other films to this day as much as good as these newer films are with the CGI, the special effects, and whatnot. I mean, the Godzilla Kong, the New Empire, and this film here are a dynamic duo that I love to watch. If I had two films to watch back to back, let's watch these two. And I have a blast with them, but it's in my number 5 spot because clearly I prefer 4 films to this one.
Well said, well said. I have in my number 5 spot the 2017 Kong Skull Island. And
Woo!
yeah, it makes my top 5. Very, very well done. And yeah, the sort of things that kind of edge it above King Kong '05 is sort of, the more efficient runtime. It also has the problem of having too many human characters, too large of an ensemble, and you kind of barely get to know certain of them. They're kind of just along for the ride. It definitely needed, some streamlining there, but it kind of gets to win a little bit when this movie's, just under 2 hours. And so the minor characters are treated as true minor characters. This isn't trying to be some epic ensemble where everyone gets a big character arc. It's like the background characters are kind of there to just, color the world a little bit and be along for the ride. And you've got your clear, 3, 4, 5 primary characters. And I like the Vietnam setting, the Vietnam placement. I love this take on Skull Island being a bit more of a grounded, tropical island with these, flora, fauna as they're described in the movie, as opposed to a prehistoric looking dinosaur land like Congo 5. Both are great, but I do like this as a contrast. We get sort of a proper, modern Kong that can kind of be in the realm of Godzilla. The Toho Kong, gets a sort of modern revival in here, in terms of his size. And they bring him back into being more of a monster, more of a monster ape than just a giant gorilla. Just a lot of the things that it did stylistically you know, are just kind of like I have preferences over King Kong '05. So this one kind of edges it. This one still has its faults, but the things that it does right, for me, I kind of put a bit more value on the portrayal of Kong. Kong gets to live. It's setting up the monster verse. I like the Vietnam setting. I like the pacing is great. Like it's a very fast paced, action packed movie. So it just kind of wins in those categories for me. It's not the sort of grandiose A movie super premium production that King Kong '05 was when it came out. This is more of being happy where it's at as just a really good monster adventure movie. But I like that. I dig that, and that works for me. So this one gets my number 5.
Man, let the real controversy begin here.
Yeah, as we
I'm
can see.
I'm not excited, but
Because I'm a better debater than you.
I'm gonna get some flack for this one.
No, it's
In
all
my
right.
number
I
four
can take it.
spot,
You've already hurt me a few times already.
I'm about to break your heart for real this
Uh-huh.
time.
Okay.
In my number 4 spot is the 1933 King Kong.
Okay. Okay. That
So,
doesn't hurt as much as you think.
okay. Well,
Yeah.
I do like this,
That's not the biggest disparity between some of our rankings for some of these movies so far. That's not the largest discrepancy.
which is almost a shock.
Yeah, yeah,
Because
yeah.
a lot of people, a lot of people hail, the original. A lot, some say, you have to keep the original as number one. It's always the best, and other people are like, no, there's better. But
Yeah.
in my opinion, clearly there's better. The 1933 Kong, I love everything about how it came about. Again, originally seen this film very late on into, I believe it was my early to mid 20s. And it's just, I think that is what kind of hurt the ranking of where it's at. Is if I'd have seen this as a young kid, I probably would have liked it way more. Kind of like I did the Godzilla franchise, or, Creature from the Black Lagoon, some of those older films. But I seen it very late on, and I 100% appreciate all the special effects, and like Fay Ray as Andero, and Robert Armstrong again as Carl Denham, and Driscoll in this, and Inglehorn, and I think the cast is great. I think the effects they did for Kong are great and phenomenal. I love that this is a precursor to like the '54 Godzilla, because these are my two favorite giant monsters of all time. So this film gets absolutely nothing but praise from me. But there's the only reason it's here is I think I seen it a little too late on in life. If I seen this as a young kid, like I did a bunch of other black and white films, this could be number 2 or possibly number 1. But for that reason, I think it's stuck in the number 4 spot.
Fair enough, fair enough. My number 4 spot, sort of at the top of my sort of middle of the pack here, outside of the top 3. I have Godzilla Kong: The New Empire. Um, I think it's a great sort of spectacle. I love that it continues the trend of making the monsters the protagonists. I love that Kong gets such a the MonsterVerse has allowed Kong to be such a character. Kong never had all of the different adventures and storylines that Godzilla was able to explore in so many movies. Kong was always kind of pigeonholed into the typical on the island, brought to the city, dies, and then lackluster sequels, kind of a story arc, and so he didn't really get to be explored as this kind of mythic character of his own. And this movie goes a long way towards that. He gets to meet a whole other, a little colony of other giant apes. He gets to establish a rival. He gets to have a kind of an adopted son. He kind of gets to take the lead over them. He's this sort of, people compare him to, like, he's like basically Kratos. He's got a battle axe. He's like from a God of War video game. He's got the power glove. He's becoming this whole different kind of, mythic character beyond just the gorilla ape monster that lives on Skull Island. And this movie doesn't have as much Godzilla as I would like, but this isn't a Godzilla ranking. But I do like the Godzilla that we get in this movie. I like seeing them team up. It's a great monster mash of a movie, and I do just like the the trend of finding ways to make the story about the monsters and doing a lot of great like visual storytelling with no dialogue, just the monsters kind of conducting themselves, and that kind of stuff is really interesting and compelling to me. And so it gets my solid number 4 spot.
I can appreciate that. Again, you make a very good case to why it should be higher. In my number 3 spot, rounding out in the bronze medal, I have this 1976 King Kong.
Mm.
This film is just something, like I said during our episode of it. This is one that I was just in love with as a kid. I watched it continuously on repeat, and I think Jessica Lange in the film does great as Dwan. Jeff Bridges does great as Jack Prescott. Fred Wilson, he's not quite someone you root against. You can't really grow to hate him like you can some of these other antagonists, but he is someone that come towards the end of the film, it's like, you know what, this guy probably doesn't deserve to live through the film. He's been a kind of like condescending like dick most of the movie, and so you do root against him. There were some other small characters I liked in the film, like Bone and whatnot, but when it comes to the film, like I said, this is the film that made me like dress up as King Kong for Halloween a couple years in a row, and it made me nerd out and get on the King Kong like bandwagon, because I can't remember 100% which one I seen first, whether it be the '62 King Kong versus Godzilla or this film, and I think it was this film which made me go back to watch that King Kong versus Godzilla. So this is the film that pretty much got me into everything that was King Kong. So that's why it's so high up, and it gets my bronze medal in the 3 spot.
Fair enough. Fair enough. For me, in my top 3 here, rounding out then the number 3rd spot would be the original King Kong versus Godzilla. Granted, a lot of childhood nostalgia in here. This was the first. I can't remember a time where I watched this movie for the first time. As far back as I remember, I've always seen and known this movie. It's always been part of like my brain and my memory and my DNA. And that might be skewing me a little bit, but I think it's great because this was a big kind of trajectory shift for both of these characters, bringing them both into the world of color, sure, but also, if this crossover doesn't happen, then the conversations of King Kong versus Godzilla of don't happen. They don't exist. Of the idea of King Kong being upscaled to be on Godzilla's size to even have that battle. That conversation doesn't really happen. People don't talk about Mighty Joe Young versus Godzilla. About upscaling him and doing that. Because it was never a thing. So this is it's an important movie for history in terms of allowing this world to happen. This movie doesn't exist. We don't get the MonsterVerse as we have it now. Just in general. In it and we probably don't get the rest of the other Godzilla movies after Toho sees it's profitable to match Godzilla up against other monsters. It's historically important, but also when you watch the film itself, for me, it's just kind of relentlessly entertaining. The Japanese cut has much more of a satirical comedic tone than the US cut, but the US cut still has it as well. Like you mentioned, that we're going to Hokkaido. Don't go to Hokkaido. Like it's great humor like that. They're flipping coins to see who's going to win. They're taking bets on it, and it's just really fun. It's got when you see two iconic characters like King Kong and Godzilla come together, and they're throwing boulders at each other, and Godzilla's shooting his heat ray at King Kong, and they're just going back and forth. It's got all the stuff you love between classic fighting movies and pro wrestling and things like that. It's got all that kind of theatrical spectacle, and it's kind of it's kind of like a generational icon, and so like I love it to death for that. And it's just an easy fun watch of a movie, and it's just kind of it movies that follow do different aspects of it better, but this is kind of like iconic and trend setting in its own way. So it's got to have my top 3 for me.
Absolutely, absolutely. It is a fun film, 100%. And you know what? I'm glad you gave it a little more love than I did, because growing up, I loved the film, and like I said, I'm glad that you put it up there, because it does deserve
Uh,
it.
I gave it more love because I'm right.
Chris is always right.
I'm so humble, aren't I?
You don't have to tell everyone that you are always right. A lot of our
Yeah,
listeners
yeah.
probably know.
Or they're sick of me.
God, who is this guy? He thinks he knows
Viewership draining by the week.
everything. Oh boy. Silver medal, number 2 spot.
Mhm.
I have Kong Skull Island.
Okay, I can respect it.
This is one of the films that I absolutely have a blast with. I love that I got to see it in theaters. I love that it continued our MonsterVerse after Godzilla 2014. And, we get a solo Godzilla film and then we get a solo Kong film right after. And as soon as those two films happened, people started talking about a Godzilla versus Kong rematch. So the as soon as I heard about this one, I was hyped. I was ready to go. I think Kong looks great in it. Like you've mentioned before, I love that he stands more straight up as more of a monster type instead of a gorilla in this. It makes him more like compatible to fight Godzilla in upcoming sequels, and I love the cast. It's a huge cast, but Brie Larson, Sam Jackson, Tom Hiddleston, John Goodman, John C. Riley, like love them. I absolutely love them. And even some of the guys that are like Mills and Cole and whatnot, like there's comedic aspects in this film. There's a hell of a lot of action. There's good monster fights between Kong and the Skullcrawler, and then we get insect portions of the film where, like we've said in the episode, that there's like a giant spider, there's like a giant stick bug creature. Like there's so much in this film to like. It is only an hour and what is it, hour and 50 minutes long without credits, and it's a very fast paced film, and I think it's easily one of my favorite solo like Kong stories. And that's we don't get like the love story with the girl in this. We get he helps Brie Larson's character at the end a little bit, kind of saves her from drowning in the water, but it's not like the normal King Kong story, and it's different. So that's why I think I have it so high at 2, is that King Kong looks great. I think it's a great cast, and it's not your usual King Kong film.
Fair enough. Very, very well said. Very well said. My silver medal goes to King Kong 33, the original, the iconic classic movie. I know a lot of people give it number 1. It's not number 1 for me, but you know, it's obviously goes without saying it's the one that started it all. But when you go back and watch it, it's just got that, it's so of its era. It's got that 1930s style of filmmaking, the style of the performances and dialogue. It's just such a time capsule. And as I get older and you can examine movies from different eras, you can really appreciate the kind of transportive element you get from watching movies from decades and decades ago. It's like you're not just watching an old movie, you're seeing a whole different approach to making a movie that reflects the era it was made in. They're almost, there weren't any home movies and home recordings and things like that going on in the 30s, 40s, 50s, but we do have the movies that were made at the time that reflect those eras. And so it's kind of the closest thing we get to kind of looking in the past in some way. Even when it's a movie about a giant ape, you're seeing glimpses of the way people talk to each other, the way life was conducted in the city, and things like that. And so it's a skewed Hollywood lens through which you're looking into the past, but you're still seeing what it was like back then, and it's interesting and infinitely compelling. But the stop motion special effects are still very impressive despite the age and the outdated nature of them, and that almost makes them more special. They truly don't make movies like this anymore. They truly are not making stop motion animation movies anymore. That's not the main modus of delivering special effects. So it's it's always compelling to see how these amazing visuals and ideas were being delivered in a world that had no they had no access to computer generated imagery and everything else. They had to find out ways to physically photograph this material, and the innovations that they applied to pull that off is it's just always a wonder to behold. Not to be like, oh, they were primitive, but they just didn't have the advanced techniques, so it was everything was much more difficult to get on screen. And so it's just every year it kind of becomes more impressive in that way. And again, it's a classic iconic story, the island adventure and bringing him back to the city, and then the monster rampaging in the city. An entire genre of movie of the giant monster rampaging in the city movie was birthed by this concept. The monsters on an island kind of a concept. How many stories and movies and shows kind of are children of that kind of concept? So it's embedded in pop culture history in such an amazing way, and the movie holds up to that when you watch it. It's just infinitely fun, infinitely enjoyable, and just a sight to behold. So it has to get the number 2 spot for me.
I can 100% respect that, because it was the start and a precursor to so many like special effects and films of that era. So I can definitely respect that it's in the 2 spot. It's not too far down in mine in the 4 spot, but I in my number 1, I think you know what it is. I got a
Yes.
In my gold medal, my number 1 spot, I have the 2005, the Peter Jackson's King Kong. And this is another, this is another huge cast. And I think, I normally don't like big casts like this, but I like a lot of the characters. Jack Black is Carl Denham. Naomi Watts is Ann Darrow. King Kong. Andy Serkis does a phenomenal job representing Kong with the motion capture. I'm, you know, Adrian Brody is Jack Driscoll. Do I believe him, like you said, as like a tough guy chasing down Kong? It's hard to, but for that one, I kind of turned my brain off and let it be. I love Hayes in the film. I love Kyle Chandler as Bruce Baxter, and I love, again, like we said before, that we get him back in, Godzilla King of the Monsters, and then Godzilla vs Kong. But when it comes to Kong in this, he's portrayed as a normal gorilla, like a overly sized, very large silverback gorilla. Not one of my favorite like looks for Kong, but when it comes to the film, him fighting the T-Rexes, and this was like the origin story to him, like learning the sign language, like, and Darrow like shows him like beautiful, and like he says that later on in the film by like putting his hand on his chest as she did. And there's so much like emotion in this film, like shown from Kong and whatnot. I just think it's an awesome portrayal of Kong. It's an awesome film for being as long it is. It's over 3 hours long, but seeing it in theaters in sixth grade was just an amazing experience, and it gets my number 1 spot. It's just when it comes to Kong films, like when I think of King Kong, and like my favorite like version of it, or the film that I would like tell people like, hey, out of all the King Kongs, like you need to give a shot, like I would probably choose this one. So that's why it gets my number 1 spot.
Yeah, very very well said. Not a bad take to have at all. There's a discrepancy in where we rank them, but it's a totally valid take for this one to be someone's favorite. I understand it completely. Uh, my number 1 though has to go to the 2021 Godzilla versus Kong, mostly just because this is the kind of movie that it's kind of on this mythic level, because you never would have, when I was growing up, the 90s, 2000s, 2010s, I never would have said the idea of another King Kong versus Godzilla seemed impossible, because the circumstances that created that original were so unique. And then, with the 2005 King Kong from Universal, it now seemed like it was at this level where, oh, King Kong is a prestige piece of monster cinema that gets made one every couple of decades, and it's going to be like this A-list category now. Like it's going to be this high tier, once a generation they remake it, and that's just kind of what it is. whereas Godzilla was this sort of ongoing franchise, but then it gets laid to rest for the 50th anniversary. And so then they're both kind of in this like dormancy phase. And it's like, well, the circumstances and odds of things coming together in a way where Toho's Godzilla and the typically American King Kong could ever exist in a capacity to ever even have a rematch seemed like it was, all but impossible. But through a series of circumstances, it gets allowed to happen. And then, of course, me being, a lifelong fan of the original movie, my dream was always like, hey, the wish list was Godzilla gets a reboot, King Kong gets a reboot, then you do another King Kong versus Godzilla movie, and then Godzilla gets to win. That's like the wish list, and we got exactly that. It's for me, it's kind of this weird dream come true kind of scenario where Godzilla versus Kong, it got to be the first theater that I saw back, or this first movie that I saw back in theaters after the lockdowns. I got to go with my younger brother. It was a 50% capacity theater, but it was packed nonetheless. And it was just kind of the experience was just kind of this perfect experience. And I went back to the theater multiple times to see it. It kind of just hits it out of the park in every category for me. I think this one was dialed in a way that GXK, the New Empire, was not quite as perfected, but this one seems like it got that line where it was about the monsters and features the monsters prominently without kind of veering. GXK gets a little too silly in some regards, just a few notches too far, and this one kind of I felt was kind of exactly dialed in. And the battle sequences between Godzilla and Kong are obviously fantastic. I'm a bit biased towards Godzilla, so I like that Godzilla was kind of, taking taking Kong's lunch money for the vast majority of the movie and kind of got to be the definitive winner. But I do love that Kong was essentially the protagonist of the movie and the hero of the movie, and that he does get to kind of achieve a victory and take out and deliver the final blows to Mecha Godzilla. Some people say, Godzilla won the fight with Kong, but Kong kind of won the movie by getting to take out Mecha Godzilla. I love seeing them have to, in a moment of desperation, team up on Mecha Godzilla. These are three iconic characters, and it's just one of those things where it just kind of, you watch it and it just gets better and better as I watch it. I can rewatch it just with ease. It just kind of, the whole thing just kind of sings perfectly and just kind of hits every note for me. It's just that perfect Monster Mash experience. So I can't sing its praises enough. I love it to death. So it's got to be my all time favorite Kong movie.
Absolutely. Perfectly said by you. I mean, I absolutely agree with you. I mean, it is a great film. And as we spoke of on the episode about it, that it might have been the film that, like, saved the movie theater business because it was so massive. So it gets a leg up right there.
I can attest to that. I was a manager at a movie theater at that time. Our days were limited, our hours were limited, and we needed something. There were movies coming out, but the theaters needed something that had that event level that was actually going to, pack some shows and pack some auditoriums, and this movie is exactly the one we needed. It got us through, and then you're moving into summer, and then the summer movies start to hit with Fast and Furious and Black Widow and things like that. So this was absolutely the movie we needed. Otherwise, it was going to be a rough time.
So with the Godzilla franchise, we did something with each era and whatnot. So I kind of wanted to either do one of the two things with you, or just one of them. I wanted to do like I don't know if we would just keep like our top 7 or top 6 of the list and get rid of our bottom 4, or if we could like what would you keep, what would you get rid of, or we could
Oh, like if we could only keep 5 movies?
yeah, what if
Oh, okay. Well, then if in that regard, it would I could kind of tell you because it's not so different from my. So if I could only keep 5 in no particular order, I would have to keep 33 King Kong. I'd have to keep King Kong versus Godzilla, the 62. I would for history sense, I would have to keep King Kong 76, King Kong '05, and then Godzilla versus Kong. Those would have to be the 5. I know, like, oh well, you're gonna not keep Skull Island, but you're going to keep Godzilla versus Kong? Yes, I would, because those 5 are kind of the 5 that I think need to exist. You got to have 33 Kong, got to have King Kong versus Godzilla, you got to have Kong 76, Kong 05, and then Godzilla versus Kong. Yes.
I think we might be in agreement on that.
I know. You can say it. I won't say it.
The other one, the other option I was gonna give you is pick one film from your top 3, one from your middle 4, and then one from your bottom 3.
Okay, that's we can have fun with that one too. Oh man, top 3, one from the top 3. Oh gosh, oh man. It defies all logic, but I'm still gonna go with Godzilla versus Kong 2021.
Not the original.
And no, yeah, sorry. If you're just talking about like what we're gonna keep for the future, obviously King Kong 33 needs to exist. But if we're just talking like what you can watch forever and what you can never watch again, I've got to keep Godzilla versus Kong. For my middle 4 there, I would say King Kong 05 probably. I would keep that one the most. I didn't rank it as the top of the 4, but in terms of like what you keep, like you got it. Like that one's kind of important, And then for the bottom 3, I'd probably keep. I guess. I don't know. I guess. Gosh, I don't know. I guess. Son of Kong. I don't know. King Kong Escapes. I don't know. One of those two. Not King Kong Lives. Not King Kong Lives.
My top 3, I would keep King Kong 05. So I'm getting rid of 76, which is very hard to do. Same with Skull Island.
Okay.
And then my middle 4, I have the 33 Kong, Godzilla vs. Kong, the New Empire, and King Kong versus Godzilla. I'd probably have to agree with you and keep Godzilla versus Kong because that film, that's just awesome. That's a whole lot of goodness. And then out of the bottom, I'd probably go King Kong Escapes.
Yeah, I think that's sound. Yeah, King Kong Escapes is probably the better choice, Although those madmen at Toho, if they had paid, I'm going on a tangent here, but if they had paid attention to the license that they had on King Kong a bit better, we could have gotten a scenario where King Kong was in Destroy All Monsters. If they had just made Destroy All Monsters a year sooner, like, how cool would that have been if King Kong was in there instead of Gorosaurus?
God, you give the guy credit because he doesn't get that much screen time, and now you're trying to take it away from him.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I like Gorosaurus, but I mean, you're going to say King Kong versus Gorosaurus and Destroy All Monsters. If they hadn't, this all goes back. If they had just let them make Ebra, Horror of the Deep as a King Kong movie, that would have come out in 66 instead of King Kong Escapes coming out in 67. And then maybe we would have gotten Destroy All Monsters in 67 instead of 68, and it could have had King Kong in it, Like, I think about the paths that history could have taken. And I think we were gypped on that. That Ebra movie is more of a King Kong movie, and I would have loved to see it as a King Kong movie. And then, Destroy All Monsters should have had King Kong in it, But, what's done is done.
We're gonna start a GoFundMe so Chris and I can open our own movie studio.
We're gonna, the one time I advocate for time travel would have been to try and right these wrongs in history.
I love it. I absolutely love it. But those are our King Kong franchise rankings. We did it. We're done. We differed quite a bit on it. So I love doing these franchise rankings to see where we wind up.
Yeah, I could tell by your vibe of just from the 05 episode. I'm like, that guy's gonna have that as his number 1. I can just tell. Said he's not taking too kindly to some of these criticisms I'm lobbing at the movie. I'm like, that's his baby there.
I am used to it because you're hating on Astro Monster and Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah, and man,
well, at least King Kong 05 is actually a good movie.
Sorry,
it's only more fun. Like, I like Astro Monster just fine. It's just more fun to hate on it because you like it so much. That's just,
I know.
It's just too entertaining. It's too entertaining.
The films that I like a lot, it makes it easy to talk crap about them, and I'm just
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
"Aw."
yeah. I got to, Mr. Part 5's my favorite Friday the 13th movie, something like that. I don't know.
Oh, no, that will never happen.
No, but hey, at least maybe the MonsterVerse might end up with us getting a Destroy All Monsters-esque movie one day, and maybe that will redeem Kong's exclusion from the original Destroy All Monsters. Who knows? Who
We
knows?
want it all. Bring it
Yeah,
to
I
us.
mean, they certainly have a bunch of monsters in the MonsterVerse, both licensed and otherwise. Like you could do like a 7 to 10 monster mashup, and you could give us that concept. You could make it happen.
You start on the script, I'll find some funding.
Yeah, I'll talk to Legendary tomorrow.
Give them a call. Send them an email.
Yeah, I got a spec script for you. Trash whatever you're working on right now. The
What
next movie's gonna be this.
what did they say in White Chicks? I'm gonna write a letter.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. 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 No kidding. Start a letter writing campaign.
Absolutely. But again, that is our two very different King Kong franchise rankings. So Chris,
Let
on
us
our
know down below in the comments where your rankings are, how you would rank the King Kong movies, what you think are the worst and best, and where you think we got it wrong and right.
absolutely show us your rankings and then let us know whose rankings you agree with more.
Exactly. Yeah, we'll do. Let us know that for sure.
Absolutely. Chris, I know that our next franchise that we are going to be starting, it's a short little four filmer, the Hatchet franchise you have never seen.
I have
There's
not.
some fun, goofy, like, cheap like 80s slasher type films, but they were made in modern day. I think the first one's 2006 and I think the most recent one was 2017, but they have some fun in them. I'm definitely curious to see once you watch them what you think of them.
Yeah, yeah, I'm looking forward to it, going into that sort of B movies, going into that sort of violence and stuff like that. I like I like the schlock every now and again, so it's fun to dip back into that. I'm always looking forward to that. That's always fun.
Absolutely. So I'll say as always, thank you for joining me on this, and thanks for indulging me in another franchise ranking, because every franchise we do that has 6, 8, 10 films, I'm gonna want your opinion or see if we can rank them and see how it goes.
Oh, gotcha, gotcha. What is it going to be? The Bond movies next, where we rank 25 of them?
Marvel movies where we rank all
Oh yeah.
20.
Oh gosh, we're gonna do the whole Marvel multiverse, starting with Blade in 1998, and we're gonna go through the whole 35 years of the Marvel movie history, and it's gonna be every X-Men movie, and every Blade movie, and every Fantastic Four movie, and every MCU movie. It's gonna all be there. We're gonna rank them all.
I want absolutely no part of that. You're on your own.
No stone unturned. We're gonna watch all of the crappy sequels. We're gonna watch Elektra. We're gonna watch Catwoman. That's not Marvel. Whoops.
We we do have some franchises later on this year that I am curious to see once we do them where your rankings lie compared to mine. But until then, again, I will say, give us your ranking of the 10 Kong films that we just did, and let us know what you think. But we got Hatchet on our next episode, and until next time.
Have a good one.